They told her not to go near the gorilla pens. But Ava never listened, not when the jungle felt like her backyard and the concrete fences like walls between best friends. She was 9, curious, sharp-eyed, barefoot more often than not. Her parents were biologists stationed deep inside the Central African rainforest, working with the reserve's anti-poaching unit. Ava had no classmates, no playground, no cartoons, but she had something better. She had Jabo. He was just a baby then, rescued from a poacher's net, bruised, shivering, and clutching a torn piece of cloth. No one expected him to survive, but somehow he did. And the first time Ava saw him, his tiny, trembling fingers reached out toward her like they already knew her. She didn't flinch. She reached back. Within a week, they were inseparable, at least as much as a young girl and an orphaned gorilla separated by mesh fencing could be. She'd sit outside his holding area with a piece of fruit in one hand and a picture book in the other. Jabo would grunt, mimic her page flips, and beat his chest softly whenever she laughed. The rangers began calling her Little Alpha. She gave Jabo a blue scarf, hers worn and frayed. He'd grip it like it was sacred. On rainy days, she'd sit beneath the shelter, outside his pen, and hum lullabies while he pressed his face to the glass, watching her lips responding with low purring sounds from deep in his throat. There was a rhythm to their days. She would come with drawings. He would answer with sticks arranged in patterns. She'd show him stones from the river. He'd trade her a feather or a seed pod. He was learning. She was growing. And then, one night, everything changed. A lightning storm cracked open the sky. Ava remembers waking to shouting, flashing lights, and the smell of burning trees. A wildfire had erupted near the base of the reserve, dangerously close to the ranger compound. Evacuation orders were issued before dawn. She wasn't allowed to go to the enclosure. There was no time, no permission. But Ava ran anyway. She sprinted barefoot through wet mud and smoke, past tents and supply crates, past rangers shouting her name. She reached the fence line, breathless and frantic. He was there, pressed against the gate, wide-eyed, already sensing the panic in the air. "Jabo!" she cried, gripping the bars. He reached for her. She pulled the scarf from her neck and pressed it between the slats. He took it gently, folding it between his fingers, and touched it to his chest. "I'll come back," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I promise. I'll come back for you." And he made a sound she'd never heard from him before, a soft, broken grunt, sadder than anything she'd ever known. The next thing she remembers is her father scooping her up, the sound of a helicopter in the distance, the taste of smoke, the heat of panic. Jabo disappeared behind the trees, and she never saw him again. Until now. 2 decades later, an email arrived. The reserve had reopened to international research, and in a quiet corner of the update report, one line leapt from the screen. Jabo, Alpha Silverback, age 29. Status: active, solitary, location, West Enclosure. The air hit her like memory. Thick, humid, laced with the scent of wet moss and burnt bark. Ava stepped off the open-back jeep with her hands trembling and her boots sinking into the familiar red mud she hadn't touched in 20 years. The reserve hadn't changed much. The same rusted gate at the entrance, the same faded signs nailed to the trees, the same low hum of distant insects weaving through the trees like invisible thread. And somewhere, beyond the mist and canopy, the same gorilla, maybe. She kept her expectations in check. She had to. Memory was a dangerous currency here. Inside the ranger compound, she was met by Celeste, one of her father's old trainees, now the senior wildlife officer. A few gray hairs, a deeper voice, but the same firm kindness. "Can't believe it's really you," Celeste said, pulling Ava in for a quick embrace. "You look just like your mom." Ava forced a smile. "I was hoping he might recognize me, too." Celeste exhaled slowly. "He's different." They walked toward the observation tower, Ava gripping her backpack, like it held her balance. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting warm orange halos across the treetops. "He lives alone now," Celeste explained. "Solitary male. Avoids most human contact. Dominant, but disengaged. We call him Jabo still, out of habit." "And you're sure it's him?" Celeste nodded. "Same scar on the left leg, same eye pigmentation. He grew into a beast, Ava. 400 pounds of instinct. You remember him as gentle, but the Rangers, most won't go near him." The words hit like cold water. From the tower they watched him. Jabo. He stepped into the clearing like a monarch returning from exile. Enormous, graceful, covered in silver that shimmered across his back like brushed steel. He knuckle-walked across the grass with no urgency, scanning his environment with calm precision. Ava didn't speak. She couldn't. It was him. But it wasn't. She watched as he paused at the tree they used to sit near, sniffed the air, then turned away and vanished into the trees. "Does he ever stay long?" she asked. "Rarely, and not for anyone." That afternoon, Ava requested a supervised approach. Celeste hesitated, then relented. The protocol was strict. 30 meters of distance, no sudden movements, no direct eye contact, no food in hand. She followed the trail into the observation zone, stopped at the edge of the brush. Jabo was already there, just beyond the trees, standing still. She whispered his name. He didn't react. She pulled the old blue scarf from her backpack and slowly laid it on the grass between them. Still nothing. No movement, no sound. His gaze slid past her like wind over stone. Ava felt something collapse inside her, not disappointment, something worse, a hollowing. That night she sat alone at the ranger bunk, staring at her fingers that used to braid flowers for him, fingers he used to press to the glass. "I thought maybe he'd feel it," she said aloud. Celeste leaned in the doorway. "Maybe he does. But 20 years is a long time, Ava. You were a child. He's not anymore." Ava nodded, but something didn't sit right. Not just the silence, the way he'd paused, turned, sniffed the air before retreating. He knew something. She wasn't giving up. The storm hit fast. 1 minute, the sky was bruised purple and buzzing. The next, the heavens tore open and dropped the jungle into chaos. Ava woke to alarms screaming across the compound. Wind whipped the tents flat. Branches shattered against windows. Rangers scrambled to secure the perimeter. She grabbed her boots, her pack, and ran. In the control tower, Celeste barked into radios. "Gate 4 is down. Repeat, breach on the northwest line." Ava's heart stopped. "Jabo's sector. Where is he?" Celeste's jaw clenched. "We don't know." An image flickered across one of the monitors, grainy, flashing, and terrifying. Jabo, out of his enclosure, but he wasn't running. He was standing in the same old clearing, the same one Ava used to play in. He was alone, soaked, still, staring into the trees like waiting for someone. Lightning split the sky. Ava was already gone. She tore through the jungle trail, feet slipping in the rising water, branches clawed at her arms, her scarf whipped in the wind. The path she remembered as a child was now a churning river of mud and debris. She found him, exactly where he'd been on the screen, standing in the rain, unmoving, a shadow sculpted in thunder. She didn't call his name this time. Instead, she sat down 10 feet away, cross-legged, shaking, breathless, and she began to hum, software broken. A lullaby she'd once sung to him through the wire when he couldn't sleep, the same tune she hummed the day they first bonded. He didn't react, but he didn't leave. She took the scarf from her pocket, held it in the rain, laid it between them. Jabo sniffed once. Then he moved. Not fast, just 1 step forward, then another. He lowered his body slowly, knuckles grazing the earth, eyes locked on hers, and then he made the sound, that low, rolling hum, a sound of safety, of memory, of home. Ava wept. Rangers watched through drenched binoculars, frozen. Not one moved, not one dared interrupt. Jabo reached for the scarf, lifted it in one massive hand. He brought it to his chest and touched it twice. His signal, their signal. The next morning, the storm was gone, but the story wasn't. The footage taken from the tower's emergency lens, a gorilla sitting with a woman, touching her scarf with reverence, circulated through the camp like wildfire. No one spoke it aloud, but everyone knew what they'd seen. Recognition. Ava didn't talk to the press. She didn't need to. She returned to the clearing alone with one small gift, the toy bird. It still chirped when wound, barely. She placed it on a stump and sat again. She didn't hum this time, didn't speak, she just waited. And Jabo came. He approached cautiously, like the day before, but now there was something softer in his movement. He sat beside her. No fear, no performance, just stillness. He looked at the toy, then at her, and leaned forward until his forehead rested gently against hers. Thomas, a ranger who had once called Jabo unreachable, wept watching it from the blind. Jabo sat with her for over an hour. When he left, he carried the scarf with him. The video didn't need music. It didn't need a narrator or a single word. Just one frame, a massive silverback gorilla lowering his head to touch the woman who once raised him. That was all it took. The clip spread across the internet like wildfire. Comments flooded in from every continent. People who had never seen a gorilla outside a zoo felt something ancient stir in their chest. Some called it proof of animal memory. Others something deeper. Grace, recognition, soul. But Ava didn't step into the spotlight. She declined interviews, panels, documentaries. "It wasn't about me," she told Celeste quietly, sipping tea outside the ranger station. "He chose to remember. He chose to forgive time." What she did do was raise money, more than anyone expected, enough to expand the reserve and give Jabo and others like him something rare in this world, freedom without performance. They called it the memory zone. No glass, no platforms, no trails for tourists, just trees, winding rivers, old paths long since reclaimed by moss. It wasn't just bigger, it was sacred, a sanctuary within the sanctuary. Jabo adjusted easily. He explored, nested, grew quieter. Rangers noted how his movements changed, more relaxed, less on edge. He spent long hours beneath his favorite fig trees. Sometimes he'd sit beside boulders, tapping at the bark as if listening for echoes. Ava visited once a year. She never tried to cross the line. She never brought a camera. Sometimes she brought the old toy bird. Sometimes a new scarf. Sometimes nothing at all. Most of the time Jabo didn't appear. But the rangers noticed. Whatever she brought, it always disappeared by morning. One visit in late spring, she arrived with a handmade bundle, a scarf, a stone from their old river trail, and a sketch of Jabo she'd drawn from memory. She sat under the tree, left it all there, and waited. She didn't hum, didn't call his name, just sat. And this time he came, not rushed, not dramatic, just presence. Heavy footsteps through the underbrush, a pause, a low, familiar grunt. He sat across from her, just a few feet away. Ava didn't move. He looked at the sketch first, then the scarf, then her. He didn't reach out, not like before, but his eyes held hers, steady and soft. And for a while, they stayed that way. No fear, no need to speak. Just quiet understanding. A ranger watching from the ridge later described it as two souls reintroducing themselves. Before he left, Jabo reached down and picked up the toy bird. He sniffed it once, then, gently, placed it on a flat rock beside him and walked back into the trees. That moment didn't go viral. It didn't need to. It lived only in memory. And that, for Ava, was enough. As the years passed, she kept returning. Sometimes he came. Sometimes he didn't. But she always brought the same thing, a small gift and an open heart. One summer, the rangers found something near his favorite fig tree, a stack of carefully placed river stones. Nothing special. Except for one thing, on top sat the toy bird, clean, dry, and balanced perfectly. A message, they said. A thank you. A reply. Jabo lived on in the memory zone, not as a symbol, not as a relic, but as he truly was, wild, whole, and deeply known by someone who had never forgotten him. And he hadn't forgotten her either. Some bonds aren't built on words. They're built in silence over years, through instinct, across species. Ava didn't come to be remembered. She came to remember, to honor a connection that never asked for attention, only trust. Jabo didn't greet her with applause. He didn't roar. He simply looked at her and knew, because what they had wasn't lost. It had just been waiting. In a world that moves fast, where even memories are fleeting, this one stood still, rooted, wild, unbroken. If this story moved you, share it. Help us spread the power of compassion and connection. Like this video to show your support. Subscribe to follow more stories that matter.